Hello, welcome to Veteran Voice. I'm Larry McCullaugh, and I'll be your host today. Got some Navy veterans with me today, and I think we've got a special program with some special people that I think is not only going to be informative, but knowing these fellows like I do, I think it's probably going to be fairly entertaining too. So I'm glad you tuned in today. Starting on the left here is, these are all three VFW members, by the way, and Paul Chamberlain. Paul, you were on a nuclear submarine, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming out to the program today.
Pleasure.
Steve Brawner, you spent how many years in the Navy?
19 years, 10 months, and 14 days.
Okay, so you did a lot of time on nuclear subs too, then.
12 years.
And then on my right, a familiar face to a lot of people, Fred Christianson, which we all very happily call him Choo Choo. Long story that we won't get into, but Fred was in Choo Choo was in World War II on a submarine. Is that correct, Choo Choo?
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all three of you fellows coming out today. I think that we've got a really wide perspective with starting from World War II and coming up to the present time. So, Choo Choo, let me start with you since you were in first. When did you go into the Navy, and why did you choose the Navy?
Well, I volunteered to go in right immediately after my 18th birthday in 1943. And I volunteered for submarines because I knew that the draftees and all the other people, if you volunteered for submarines, that means you had it nailed. You would go to submarines, you know. And that's why I volunteered for submarines.
Yeah. Now, what kind of training did you get, and where did that take place at for submarines?
Well, after boot camp, I went to a diesel school at Navy Pier, Chicago. And then after finishing diesel school at Chicago, then I went to submarine school at New London, Connecticut. And that's where I got my submarine training. And after the training there, then I was shipped to Australia with 27 other people.
So how long did the submarine training take that you had stateside before you went to Australia, just roughly?
Oh, 6 months, about 6 months and 3 days, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, how about you? You spent quite a few years in the Navy. Why did you choose the Navy, and where did you take your training at?
Okay, well, my route to submarines is a little bit more circuitous than Choo Choo's. His was direct. I joined the Navy in March of '65. I chose the Navy because I grew up at the beach. I was a surfer, and I liked the ocean, and I really wanted to be in the Navy, you know. I wanted to be in submarines from the beginning, but I wasn't able to, and maybe I should, okay, you have to have a certain level of security clearance to get on submarines. At the time, I couldn't get that level of security clearance, so I wound up on a destroyer. Now, my training was boot camp. I went to A school. I was an electrician's mate at the time. That was about 18 weeks, and then I went to, my first ship was a destroyer, DD-711, USS Eugene A. Green. And I spent my first hitch on destroyer. I got on the submarines after I came off shore duty. After that, I was able to get a security clearance. I had demonstrated good citizenship for 5 years, and they finally let me on submarines. So.
And you wanted to be on submarines from the beginning?
Oh, yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, growing up, I watched Navy Log and The Silent Service. Now, I can still hum the tune if you want to hear it. But
No. We may do that later on if we don't have enough to talk about, but I don't think that'll be a problem.
I don't think it will be.
We may get to that, though. Paul, how about you? When did you go to the Navy, and why did you choose the Navy?
Well, I chose the Navy because I get out of school at 17, and I had a brother that was in the Navy also, and a brother in the Army, and I didn't want to go Army. So Navy I went. And they sent me to San Diego boot camp. I did boot camp out there, and I get stationed right out there on a surface ship. And it was a patrol craft escort and rescue. It followed the fleet for rescue and mine sweeping and stuff like that. And we were tied up at a submarine pier out in Point Loma, California.
Oh, Ballast Point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had submarines on the side of us. And I started getting interested in looking at them, you know. And I think the first one I went down on was, I don't know if it was a Stingray or the Baja, one of those two. It was a diesel boat. And I saw how small it was. Cramped quarters, you know. I said, hey, I'd fit in that no problem. One-man kitchen and all that, galley. Anyway, I had to serve up my surface term because I had a couple of major operations and submarine wouldn't take me then. And I get out in 1966 and stayed out for 14 years and re-entered the Navy in 1980. And I was stationed on the submarine tender. And of course I applied for submarines and that's where I got it. I did my submarine training at New London, Connecticut. It was about 13 weeks back then when I went in. And I was stationed right out there at New London for 11 years. I was on submarines for 11 years. So I was on diesel, I was on fast attack, and boomers.
So you got a pretty wide perspective of all the different vessels that
Yes, I do.
that you did. Well, I got to say, starting out, and we were talking about this before we started. Everybody did their own job and did what they had to do. But I've always had a special respect for you guys in the submarines because I couldn't do it. I'm just too claustrophobic. And you guys act like, oh, it's no big deal. So I really admire you for that.
Actually, I enjoyed the 11 years that I spent on them.
Really.
I wanted more, but you know, they said 5 years straight, you got to take a break. And they put me on the surface, and I said, no, that's not the break I want.
You want to go back.
So I exited the service at that time, due to medical reasons, though.
Okay.
So.
Well, Choo-Choo, you were in during World War II, obviously. You went in 1943. Where were you stationed, or where did they send you to after you finished all your training, and what area did you patrol, and what was it like doing World War II?
Well, after I finished diesel school at New London, we went across country by train to Oakland. And we had to go to Mare Island, and we waited 2 weeks, and then finally we boarded a baby aircraft carrier out of Oakland. And what baffled us, this baby aircraft carrier had Black Widow fighters, P-61 fighters, you know. And we thought, well, hell, going to Australia, why are we going aboard a aircraft carrier with night fighters, you know? So after we got underway, we found out where we were really going, and we were headed for Finch Haven, New Guinea. Japanese had just taken over Finch Haven, New Guinea, and that's why they wanted the P-61 night fighters. So we got off the aircraft carrier, and then they put us up with the Marines in tents. There were 27 of us, and we had to live in tents for 3 weeks. And the Marines, boy, I tell you, we took a lot of guff from the Marines, you know. Because what we were doing, we were looking for souvenirs. They'd just taken it from the Japanese, and we wanted to range far and wide and look for souvenirs, and that was a no-no. But then after 3 weeks, they told us, okay, pack up your gear, you're heading for Brisbane, Australia. So we went down to the dock, got on a whaleboat, and then start heading out into the bay. And there was a big, beautiful cruiser sitting out there. And we thought, oh man, we got it made now. We're going first class to Brisbane. So we start chugging out for the cruiser. Then we made a right turn and went around the stern of it. And there was an old banana boat sitting there. The scroungiest boat or ship we ever seen. It was a bucket of rust. Surely we can't be aboarding that thing. Sure enough, the old whaleboat ties up alongside that banana boat, and we got aboard that old banana boat. And I mean, it was a bucket of rust. So we carried, in those days, we carried our hammocks. You know, we'd pack our sea bag, and then around the outside of it, we wrapped our hammock with a blanket. And we had to use the hammocks on there. They didn't have any berthing space to speak of at all. So we had to swing our hammocks, but it was a good feeder. And all I had flank, she could make 9 knots. So it took us a little while to get to old Brisbane.
Yeah.
You should have swam.
Yeah. Would have got there fast.
Yeah, you'd have swam faster.
Yeah. So we finally got to Brisbane. And then I went into what they call a relief crew. A relief crew is a group of people that when submarines come in from a patrol run and they need overhauling and all this type of thing, the relief crew takes over while the whole ship's company goes on a 2-week R&R at the best, finest motels and all of this, you know. And then after spent, I think it was 3 months in the relief crew. This is kind of interesting story. After 3 weeks in the relief crew, a good friend of mine that I went through boot camp, diesel school, sub school, and all that, were in the relief crew. And a submarine came in there, and she needed one crew member. One of the crew members got sick, and they wanted a replacement. So the chief comes up to Beck and I and says, "Hey, one of you 2 guys are going to sea. Which one of you guys want to ride that boat?" Well, it was an older submarine, and neither was really wanted it, you know. So we didn't say anything. He says, "Well," he said, "the only way we'll settle it is with a flip of a coin." So we told Beck to call it, and Beck called it, and he lost. But the submarine that he went aboard was the Seawolf. And after the Seawolf departed Brisbane, heading up toward the Philippines, they were traveling in what they call a submarine lane. Air Force is notified where the submarines are going to be going up this lane, and also the Navy and all. But just prior to the Seawolf getting to this particular area, a Japanese submarine fired a torpedo at a destroyer. And then there was much turmoil, you know, all the surface craft was looking for that Japanese submarine. Unfortunately, the Seawolf was 12 hours late because of high seas. So she got into the submarine lane, and then all the destroyers and planes, everything, looking for the Jap sub. All this destroyer, Greer, she picked up sounds of a screws, which they knew was a submarine. So they attacked it. And after 3 hours of depth charging, they were satisfied they sunk the submarine that was going up in the safety lane. Well, that night, the Seawolf, every submarine reported into Brisbane every night, you know, by radio. Nothing from Seawolf that night. Nothing the following night. So the only conclusion they could come to was that this destroyer, Greer, depth charged the Seawolf and sunk it. So just for that flip of a coin, I wouldn't have been here today.
Yeah.
So in it,
Old Beck, yeah.
oh gosh,
That was the only submarine that was sunk by
Friendly.
friendly fire in World War II.
really? It was just a matter of running a little too late and
Yeah.
not knowing where they were at. That's why they got
one of
charged.
those, yeah,
Yeah.
just one of those things that happen. You
Yeah,
know.
well, it did. Steve, how about you? Where were once you finished, once you got on the submarines, where did you all patrol at, and you know what kind of things did you go through?
Well, I didn't have to go to sub school. I was what they called a direct input. It was an experiment the Navy used for a very short period of time. Choo-Choo can probably attest to this, is that in Rickover's Navy, Admiral Rickover, who was the father of the nuclear Navy, pretty much felt like that once you hit E5s, you know, second class petty officer, that you were already misprogrammed to be on his submarines. Seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
you, Rickover wanted you pristine when he got you, you know, pure. He didn't want anything in your mind other than nuclear, submarine, protocol, and procedure. And as it turned out, the direct input program didn't last very long because most of the people that went into it couldn't get through the qualification, or they couldn't get through the lifestyle. But I was fortunate, I got through it. So my first boat, I'd come out of B school. I had to change rates to get on submarines. I was an electrician's mate. In order to get on a submarine as an electrician's mate, I had to be nuclear trained. I was going to go to nuke school after shore duty, but I couldn't get there because, number one, I had to get a waiver on my, I was an E6 by then, a first-class petty officer. That may have been wavered, but I knew the commander of the nuke school at Mare Island, and they wouldn't waiver age. I was 25 years old, and once you're past 25, they wouldn't take you. Now, in the early days when Choo Choo went in, that was they were pulling everybody off. I believe, you know, I'm speaking. I'm not trying to speak for you, but I know that one of the chiefs that I worked for, a master chief, he said he got shanghaied off of a diesel boat into nuke school, and his life changed forever. But they were actually shanghaiing, you know, doing it. They had a press gang going around getting the good enginemen and machinist mates and putting them in nuke submarines. But me, like I said, I was direct input. I went to the USS George Washington, which was the first nuclear boomer missile submarine. It was the first one. It was, we called it the Cadillac because it was the oldest, but it had a pretty good reputation, and we still won what they call battle-E's and stuff like that. So I got qualified. I got qualified my first run, and I spent the next 12 years on submarines and shore duty, you know, back and forth.
So you were just all over the place then, huh?
Well, at first, I was on a destroyer, otherwise known as a target. You know, you had submarines and you had targets. And, you know, that's what we call submarine surface craft.
Is that like anything on the surface?
Anything on the surface is a target. It's fair game.
Well, I guess from a submariner's point of view, that's
oh yeah.
That's what you're
I mean,
looking
crosshairs look. You know, we like the crosshairs.
Crosshairs can block right out
Yes.
whatever the flat colors are. You don't need to worry about it.
Steely-eyed killers from the deep. Yeah. Anyway, I was motivated. I was, you know, pumped up to get on there, and I enjoyed my time on submarines. I mean, it wasn't always, you know, the easiest job to do. I mean, there were a lot of times when you went without a lot of sleep because either they manned those submarines by your watch station. They didn't man it by workload. You had certain watch stations that had to be continually manned 24 hours a day. And they pretty much staffed or crewed the submarine that way. So, you know, plus you drilled and trained all the time. So sleep didn't come sometimes for a lot of hours. Yeah. And if something broke,
A lot more hours.
there was a lot more hours because then you were out there fixing it. And
Right.
And they had to be done.
yeah, you couldn't call up the shipyard and say, hey, why don't you come on out here and we'll open a hatch for you. Come on down and fix it for us, you know.
Well, now, Paul, when you got back in and got on submarines, did you have any special training that you needed to go through to
well,
get
I
on
went-
the subs?
I had to go to submarine school to learn all about the submarines. You know, I'd known just a little bit of them when I was first in, but I had to go through this training, you know, and all kinds of situations that could arise on the submarines, you know, like flood and fire and the like. And that was pretty interesting. We had what they call a water tower, a dive tower, in Groton, Connecticut. And you
Okay.
had to,
Ho, ho, ho.
they filled it up with water, okay, and you were down the bottom. And you had to float up the top, but you had to come up quick. I mean, really quick. Because if you didn't, they pulled you right in. See, they had steps all the way with divers in case you couldn't make it. You got to hold your breath and go ho, 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 all the way up. And sometimes you spiral and pop out of the water. Well, I had to do it twice. I liked it the first time, so I did it a second time.
You liar.
No, honest to God. Honest to God, I did.
You enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it. I
Really?
thought it was fun popping out of the water.
I knew
So-
there was something funny about it.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so anyway, we went through that training. And that's where they kind of weeded out a lot of people, you know, that weren't really,
Crazy like you.
well, okay, yeah. Well, anyway, after, while I was going through submarine school, this chief petty officer from the submarine base comes up to the school to see who's getting along, and he was a cook, a commissaryman, cook, and he was looking for a cook. Well, lo and behold, I was one, and the only one in the class. And he scouted me and said, I know where you're going when you get out. You're going to the Daniel Webster submarine. It's a ballistic missile submarine. And sure enough, he'd check on me every week, see if my grades were up and everything so that I could graduate on time. Well, I finally graduated. I had a couple of minor medical things, but, you know, they healed up real quick. And then he took me and we went off. Well, probably a month after I get out of submarine school, I was on my way to Holding Lock, Scotland. That's where our submarine was out of. We were home based at Connecticut, but our submarine was over there. And we go over there, we get on the boat and transfer a cruise. You know, that took about 4 days, 5 days. And then another 10 days repairing and replenishing the food and all that, and supplies. And then we were on our way out. We'd be out for 96 days, 98 days, without surfacing.
So the whole time you're underwater? 3 months?
You work every single day. You don't get a day off. And like Steve said here, lots of long hours with the drills and the fun and games that they want to play. You know, training they call it. And I'll tell you, and then field days, cleaning the submarine. It was all a blast, you know. That's the only day of the week I hated, though, was field day. Because you had to get out under the ovens in a small space, and guess who got to do it? Because he was short in stature. Me.
So you got appointed that wonderful duty.
Yeah, I was appointed that in the freezer, because the freezer was just a small opening, you know, a hatch, and we get all our supplies in that freezer, and I had to go digging an awful lot of times, because we'd pack it when it came in, about that far from the ceiling, and only Paul could slip in there and crawl in those boxes and look for whatever we had to have.
That's why they had you in their sights during the training.
Absolutely,
No,
because all the other guys on the crew, some cooks, were big boys.
They like their own cooking.
They like their own cooking?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
probably has a lot to
Well,
do
they
with it.
did.
Yeah.
Choo-Choo, I noticed that you got some things there that you were unwrapping a second ago. You get some souvenirs that you picked up in
Yeah.
World War II. Show us what you got there.
After Seawolf left Brisbane, next boat that came in was Stingray. And Stingray was one of the 4 special mission boats, which were under, of all people, General MacArthur. On the special mission boats, what we did, we'd load up what we called dunnage, and it was clothing, Thompson machine guns, radios, anything that would be of use to the guerrillas up in the Philippines. And then the first run I went on with Seawolf, we loaded up 26 tons. That meant we had to take all our bunks out of our berthing space, and they just piled everything inside, and we just slept on the top of it, you know. So we went up to northern Luzon. The submarines always reconnoitered the beach before they'd ever make a landing, the Army and Marines. And we went up to northern Luzon, and when we unloaded, what would you do? We'd back into the beach. we didn't like special mission boats because it was always shallow water operations. Sometimes you couldn't even submerge a submarine. If a Japanese gunboat or whatever caught you on the surface, we didn't have a chance because we couldn't even dive. You know. So up in northern Luzon, we backed into the beach. We had signals arranged with the guerrillas, and they had the correct signals and all of this type of thing. So we backed in real slowly to the beach, as close as we could get. And then the guerrillas started sending out small boats to unload all of our cargo, you know. And I was up on deck. I had a Thompson, and our orders were to shoot anything suspicious, you know, because, hell, we didn't know what the guerrillas were really like, you know. So when I was up on deck, a guerrilla came over to me and he pointed to my shirt, blue dungaree shirt. And he held up 3 fingers, you know, 3 fingers. I didn't know what he meant, you know, but one of the guerrillas there could speak broken English, you know. So I asked him what he wanted. And he says he wants 3 dungaree shirts. Well, here we are with tons and tons of khakis and all that, but he was bound and determined he wanted a navy blue shirt, you know. So then he said he'd trade me 3 navy shirts for this. And hell, I didn't want his bolo. This is the bolo. This is what they call a bolo. I'll explain that. But anyway, he kept insisting he wanted those 3 shirts. And finally I said, well, just to get rid of them, I asked one of the guys to go down to my bunk and underneath the mattress, get 3 shirts and bring it up.
Thanks.
So I gave him the 3 shirts. But I told him I didn't want that bolo. He wouldn't listen. And this other girl that can speak English says, you better take it. Take it. So I did. Well, as a result of that run up there, the Philippine government, after the war, issued presidential unit citations. Now, this presidential unit citation I got from the Philippine government was authorized in 1948. But they never had the money to issue all these presidential unit citations. I got this 2 years ago. And I got a ribbon with it, and I also got a beautiful medal to go with it. But anyway, based on all of the experience there, the guerrillas wrote a book called The Bolo Men. And it zeroes in on the bolos. And they wrote this book, and we got it 2 years ago. They sent it to us. But it's about the bolos and the bolo men. But they call the guerrillas the bolo men. And this is what a bolo is like. This is a Muslim bolo. Razor sharp on both sides. Cut, coming and going. And during the conversation with that guerrilla that could speak English, you know, when I looked at the bolo, it had these notches in it, right across here. And I asked him if he could find out what those notches mean. And he asked the guy, and he says, well, those are the 4 Japanese that I... But this is what the book is.
You think they may have picked that up from the cowboys that used to notch their guns? Do you think they were watching the cowboy movies and guys were notching their guns and they got the idea from us maybe? Or maybe we stole it from them. I don't know.
Yeah. Now this bolo is featured in this book. They got our submarine in there and all the crew members. And right now they're in process of building a memorial to the submarine, Stingray, for supplying them for the all the stores that we bought up there.
I mean,
And I've got my picture in here, and it explains about the bolo, all of this type of thing.
it's pretty interesting.
But the Philippine government wants my bolo.
They want their bolo back?
They say we don't have any bolos in existence of that vintage. So the people that wrote this book, you know, I said, would you please donate this back to the Philippine government? And I said, well, I'll think about it.
I'll give that my most serious consideration.
I said, I would think about it, you know, and eventually I will. You know.
Well, let's hope it doesn't start.
But in the
some kind of-
meantime, it's a nice cherished
that's
little
pretty neat little
little
pretty neat
souvenir,
yeah.
you know.
Well, let's hope this doesn't start an international incident with the
Yeah.
people in the Philippines. They've got enough of their own issues over there right now without you making them mad about the bolos. So
Signs and everything. Bring our bolo back.
bring back our bolo.
Yeah, I can see it on
But there's a lot of beautiful work, artistic work in
It
that.
is,
All
it is very
handmade.
nice, very
Oh, this
special.
was made out of a truck spring.
Really?
Yeah, it was made out of a truck spring.
No
The guy
kidding.
told me that.
Well, Steve, how
So
about
that's one of my souvenirs.
that's a pretty special one, obviously.
Yeah.
Steve, did you have a chance to get on any shower leave, pick up any souvenirs, or did you just cut loose and
Well,
have
I got
fun
a
when you
couple
got on
black
shore?
eyes. I mean,
You got a couple of black eyes?
no, I didn't. No souvenirs other than memories of the boats and stuff.
What kind of places did you guys get shore leave at?
We didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Well, I've only been one shore leave on a submarine.
Really?
Yeah, we went out. Typically, the way it worked when I was in, I was home ported in Hawaii. My boat was home ported in Guam. We would fly to Guam, relieve the other crew, fix the boat, take the boat out, dive the boat. 77 days later, we pop to the surface and come back in. Now, during that time, we were on patrol. Now, technically, we weren't supposed to know where we were, but I was an interior communications electrician at the time, and I seaman. I had the gyro. I knew what direction we were heading, you know. Plus, I'd work in the nav center. I could look at the SINs, and I could figure out where we were.
Now, what do you mean, the sins? Or
That was I forget the acronym. It's something inertial navigation system.
okay.
This thing was high tech then. I don't know how high tech it is now, but you could also, the machinist mates back in the engine room who worked back there, the nukes back there, they could tell pretty much where they were by the water temperature. But when the water temperature got below freezing, you knew you were pretty far north. And the reason the water could get below freezing is because it was brine, you know, it's salt water, so it didn't freeze it, you know, like regular fresh water would. And to tell you the truth, I really never did care where I was, because what difference would it make, you know?
You weren't opening the door and going on Liberty, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
right. And if you ever got sunk, we were in the pretty close to the Marianas Trench, which was like, what, about 8 miles down or something like that. That tank, talking about, you know, Paul's tank experience, that was propaganda. They used to give us stanky hoods. The stanky hood's a hood that you put over, and that's how you got to the surface. But what they didn't tell you was that you were depth limited. Once you got past the continental shelf, where all the
It wouldn't
stanky
do it.
hoods in the world wouldn't done you any good.
You'd never come up in time.
You'd never come up. You know, you'd look like a fish with the.
You'd
you know, with the-
implode down there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any idea how deep you were?
I was a diving officer. I knew how deep. I better know how deep I was.
How about you in the galley? Did you ever have any idea how deep?
Oh, yeah.
Did
Sure
you?
did.
Oh, yeah.
I
Did-
was
did-
friends with them.
Oh, they told you.
I would have to, as a diving officer, I would have to call down
We had good communication.
and say, hey, or he'd call me. Here's what he would do. He'd call me up. Now, this never happened between the two of us, but his counterpart that I knew would call me up. I was the diving officer. And they'd say, Brawner, yeah, what do you want? Hey, could you maintain a zero bubble for about an hour? I'm baking cakes. A zero bubble is the aspect of the ship. You know, 1 degree up, you'd be up, 1 degree down like that. So he'd want a zero bubble for a while.
In other words, keep us straight.
Yeah, and
So his cakes wouldn't be.
Right.
You got it. I had a lot of lopsided cakes.
And then he'd also call and tell me, he says, what's the pressure in the boat? See, the pressure in the boat, you've got an enclosed tank that you can either have a vacuum when you're packing air, that's compressing air. You could actually pull a vacuum in the boat. You'd be less than atmosphere. Or you could have a pressure in the boat if you had a leak, and air leaks. You know, we had a little bit. You know, we always had leaks, but you'd have a pressure in the boat. So him, being the cook, would want a 0. No pressure in the boat, no vacuum in the boat. So his cakes would rise nicely.
Yeah. According to direction. Navy recipe card, sorry.
Yeah. And then, so, you know, talking about the cook, I did a lot of maintenance up front, you know, on the forward part of the boat, because I wasn't nuclear trained. All my equipment was, the only thing I had back aft in the engineering spaces were the communications equipment and a lot of the indicators. But I always made friends with the cook because he was the most important guy on the boat. If he wasn't happy with you, you didn't get fed. You know, so you kept the cook pretty. Yeah, if you had a problem, you made sure his problem was solved.
And it wasn't like you could leave the base to go down to McDonald's
No,
or
you
Burger
couldn't,
King.
yeah.
You were
I don't
pretty-
think they had McDonald's.
He was the
back
only.
then.
He was the only fast food in town. I mean,
Yeah.
so-
We were all wrapped up in one.
So you guys all kept good communication with each other for a number of reasons. Number
Oh,
one,
absolutely,
got a pretty
yeah.
good idea where you're at.
Yeah.
Pretty good idea what depth you're at.
Right.
You know what's coming up at the next chow
Mm-hmm.
meeting.
Well, like when we had what we called an ORS patrol, operational reactor safeguard exam. Now the electricians from back aft had PMs that they had to do, planned maintenance they had to do in the forward end of the boat. They did the precipitators. These are the things they had in the galley ranges, the hoods,
Right.
to take out the
Impurities. And
impurities
stuff,
in the
smoke and
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
They also fixed his equipment, his galley ranges and ovens, and you know, that stuff like that. And they had the battery well up there. Well, my people, when we were on ORS, the electricians picked up my planned maintenance back aft. They took care of the sound-powered phones, the announcing systems, all that stuff back aft. I picked up their PMs. So I started working on his equipment. So I had to make sure his, you know, ovens worked, his grills worked, his
Keep
vent
that
pod
fire.
precipitators.
That's
and
something I
shit like
never
that.
thought of. Where does the smoke go when you're cooking in a galley? In a
Goes into that
submarine?
precipitator. It's supposed to take it out. It's like and plus we had filters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that precipitator in the galley had to be cleaned every night at the end of the day, you know,
Mhm.
24
I'll
hours.
be darned.
And it was
Yeah.
kind of a bear to do.
Now that was on the nuclear subs, right?
Yeah.
Choo, do you know very much about what was going on? And you were on diesel and then went to nuclear later on, correct?
Did what?
You started on the diesel submarines and then
Yeah.
went to the nuclear ones later on. What was one of the biggest transitions that you think you noticed from going to the older diesel submarines versus the new nuclear submarines?
Probably size,
Well,
space.
the camaraderie between
Yeah,
a
'cause you
nuclear
were too.
boat and a submarine boat, there was no comparison. The diesel boats, we were tight-knit. On the nuke subs, it wasn't that way. It was totally different, you know. And
'cause there
most of us got T-shirts that says "Diesel boats forever," even though you were a nuke, you know.
Yeah.
DBF.
Yeah, yeah. We really loved the old boats.
Was-
And then
was-
one submarine I was on that was kind of interesting. After we came back from Australia, I put the Stingray out of commission in the Philadelphia Navy Yard. And then they organized a group they called the Rainbow Division. So after I left Stingray, I got into this Rainbow Division. And what it was, we went over to France to pick up the latest German submarines. They had what they called a Type 21 boat that was so far superior to ours, it was just unbelievable. To get out of the English Channel from the submarine pens in France, they had what we call a snorkel. It was an 18-inch tube that we could raise up to the surface, and then it had a float valve on top so that you could take air from above the surface, and you could run your diesel engines underwater. Because the English Channel was so highly protected that the German boats had a terrible time trying to get through the English Channel and get out to sea. So we picked up this German U-boat and brought it back to Newport News, and it was about 98% complete when we got it. So we sailed it back, and then we finally refurbished it down in Newport News. And there were so many new features on that submarine, you know, that all we did, you know, day after day after day, was take that thing out to sea and then wring it out, you know.
What do you mean, ring it out?
Or check out all the new equipment, you know,
Oh, okay.
you know, how it functioned, the life of the equipment and all that, you know. The periscope was so far superior to ours. It was really out of this world.
Was the optics were a lot better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, instead of running around with the periscope, you had a bicycle seat.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
you
I've
just
seen
sat
them.
on it,
Yeah, I've
you
seen
know.
them.
Yeah, and then you operated the hydraulic pedals with your feet,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one other thing that we had on it that our president, Harry Truman, really liked. Truman, he liked Key West, Florida. That was his stomping grounds on vacation, you know. So Truman came down to Key West, and he wanted to go aboard the German U-boat, you know. So of course, you know, we got everything ready for him, and he came down there. And then he went up to the sail, and we had quad 50 up in the sail,
Yeah.
all hydraulically operated on a bicycle seat. So Truman got up there, and then he was showing how to operate the thing, this way, up and down. He played with that quad 50 for 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he
He's the
just
president.
loved
I
it.
guess he could.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just loved it.
Yeah.
So then after he quit playing, then we took him out to sea, and then we dove. We didn't go down very deep, only to 50 feet. You don't want to take the president down all the way to depth, you know, maximum depth.
Right.
Yeah. But he really loved it. But we learned more from that German submarine. The next class of submarines that came out were a fast attack. But that German submarine, she could make 18 knots submerged,
That's fast.
where the maximum of our fleet boats was 8.5, about 9, you know.
Yeah.
Really?
And they were only 350-foot boats. This German sub could go to 1,000 feet. And she was quiet and running. Oh, it was a beautiful piece of machinery. So a lot of the features that were on that German submarine were developed into our fast attack submarines. And that's where the fast attackers came from.
Right.
Yeah.
Tank class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of that information we actually got from the.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
U-boats and
Really?
stuff. Sure.
But that
yeah.
was 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, for almost 4 months, just to wring that thing out. You
So
know.
what did you do when you had all that time off? I mean,
Did you get any sleep?
Can you sleep?
That's all we had time for. Yeah, boy, you was glad to hit that rack.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Guaranteed.
That's something else. You all were talking a while ago about how long you would be staying under. You know, you gave a good example there, and then you get into the nuclear submarines, and you're talking 2-3 months. Did you have any idea what time of day it was, or did it make a difference, or did you
Didn't
just have
make
a
a
certain
difference.
We
shift?
were on an 18-hour clock
Yeah.
because we had 3 sections of 6-hour watches. So
Yeah.
you just rolled that way. You rolled 18 hours. And, I mean, it didn't matter. You know, you kind of, actually we did get kind of a day off. It wasn't really a day off because if you had something broke, you had to fix it. And if there was something, you had to stay on your watches, of course. But you didn't have to drill. Sundays, they used to give us some slack on Sundays.
Yeah.
Unless you screwed up Saturday when you were supposed to be field day in and you didn't get it done right. then Sunday would be a busy day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, that kind of thing.
So when you got off time, it was pretty much what, cards and.
Oh, I played
Yeah.
poker. We had a poker game that started. This is when I was on the George Washington. We had a poker game that started as soon as we got past Glass Breakwater in Guam and dove the boat. We went to maneuvering watch. We dove the boat, got the ship. We had the angles and dangles to make sure everything that wasn't tied down shook itself loose, and we tie it back up. So once we got the poker game started, it stayed until the end of patrol. It was the same game, just the players had changed. We'd have to stop for drills, of course, but everybody had their own chips in their pocket, and stuff like that. And we kept that on books. And the XO, everybody had a limit based on your pay grade and your marital status. You had limits that the XO would let you lose, then you're out of the game, you know, that kind of thing. But one of the things I wanted to get across on, you know, about submarines, you know, if I could go ahead and add something in here. The thing I liked most about the submarines was, you know, Choo-Choo said it was a lot tighter, you know, crew on a diesel boat, and that's probably true. I got to spend 6 months on a diesel boat when I was in the shipyard. My ship, the George Washington was in the shipyard. They needed an eye seaman on this on the USS Sailfish, and I spent the next, I guess it was about closer to 5 months on that boat. It was a diesel submarine, and it's a whole different world. I offered to take a bust from chief down to first class to stay on that boat. They didn't rate a chief, so I said, make me a first class. Go from E7 to E6. I was that impressed with the diesel boats. But they said, no, you can't do that. We can't bust you for wanting to be a submarine, you know, a diesel boater. But anyway, it was fun. But the thing I liked, the whole time I was on submarines, that was 12 years, I only saw one fight. And it was that fast, and it was over. And we split them up. Because that was automatic disqualification. I also learned some lessons in life on the boats. You don't have to like somebody to respect somebody. There were a lot of guys, not a lot, but there were people on the boats that I was on that I actually didn't like very well. But I respected their ability to do the work that they were put there to do, and, you know, carry out their duties. And I think all the other, you know, these Choo-Choo and Paul could say the same thing, that they didn't like everybody they met on the boat, but they probably respected, you know,
absolutely.
the people that they worked with, and served with.
Well, that guy that you didn't like, he could be the guy that would save your life.
That's right.
Exactly, because you're all there together no matter what.
Yeah.
And
Talking about the nuke boats, you know, they're state submerged. But on the old fleet boats, we'd have to come up every day after dark and charge batteries.
right.
Because as soon as sunrise, we'd submerge and then be on batteries all day. And then at night, we'd have to come up and charge batteries, where the nukes stay underwater all the time.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we'd have to come up and burp the boat.
Why don't you?
Well, if you got-
pat it on the back or
Well,
what?
if you had too much of a pressure in the boat or something like that, you might come up at night. And the other thing was, too, is when you operated in the Pacific, night was day and day was night. Because as soon as we dove the boat, we also switched our clocks to Greenwich Mean Time, which was Zulu, Zulu clocks. So when it was noon, it was like midnight, you know, so our daytime, you know, there was some people, you know, like Paul, he may be the night baker, but most of his work was done during the day. The
Exactly.
boat day.
It was just opposite.
So if his day, it was night when it was day. So a lot of times, what I'm saying is that during the day we could drill. During the boat day, we could drill because it was dark on top.
Okay.
So his job was a lot harder in the Pacific because he's trying to cook. And we're trying to spill everything he's got on the stove off, and, you know, on the grill, you know, it's, but it was, that's the thing I like. And there is a screening process to get into these things.
Absolutely. It's all volunteer. You can't just, they can't just send you on to a submarine. You have to actually volunteer service to get on submarines, and of course, qualify to get on them. You know, security and all that.
Plus, I had to go talk to a shrink. You know,
Oh, I did too.
They,
You know, it's a weeding out process
I
again.
can understand
they
that.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure you were really, really crazy, you know, to get on the things.
Before you got on,
Right.
because they
Yeah.
knew you would be
They
when
wa-
you got
they
off.
wanted you to be certifiably nuts, you know.
Saved him the appointment when you got off. We already knew he was crazy when we sent him down there, so we don't have to worry about it. Paul, let me ask you something, just real quick. Paul, I'm sorry. Steve had said something about he wanted to get something out. We're getting close to the end here. Is there anything that you want to make sure that you know,
Well,
I don't want to run out of time here without y'all getting out a story that may be one of your favorites that you want to tell, and then I'm
well,
going to come
there's
to you.
just one thing that we did, and I've never told anybody, you know, other than the crew members when it happened, because it was untellable at that time, okay? We couldn't speak about it or anything to our families at all, but now I can. As a ballistic missile submarine, we were the first, the Daniel Webster, to go up north and go under the ice, and we stayed under there for 10 days. And we actually broke surface, you know, with periscope, and we got to all have, like you said, periscope liberty. We get maybe a couple of minutes each. All crew members rotated so they could see all the ice and the birds, and we didn't see any penguins or anything like that. But yeah, and it was cold in that boat. Trust me, we were told at the beginning of patrol, we didn't know we were going there.
Dress warm.
Bring heavy clothing. No explanation, just bring heavy clothing. So everybody brought their thermals and all that. It was pretty exciting, actually.
10 days under the ice.
10 days under the ice.
I never
We were
got
the
to do that.
first. I'm sure they do it now, probably regularly, but we were the first ones to do that.
In the
The
Army, when they
ship
told you
outside.
to bring your warm stuff, that meant you knew you were going to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Shoot, you, have you got something you want to make sure that gets out here on the program before we run out of time today?
Oh, one thing about volunteering for submarines. One thing that was really important to us, okay? On submarines, you either come back whole or you don't come back at all. None of this losing arms, legs, and all that, you know. And that's one of the things that we liked about submarines. You come back whole or you don't come back.
So there weren't, you seldom had any type of industrial type
Well, you
accidents or things like that where you might lose a limb or something?
we're talking about wartime. You
Yeah,
know. I
wartime.
mean, either if you make it, you make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
In
if
one
you don't-
piece, or if you don't
yeah.
make it, you're
You're
with
all-
Davy Jones.
You're all down there together.
Well, you've seen so many guys come back minus arms, legs, all of this, all shot up. But the good part of it during the war, you come back whole or you don't come back.
Plus, we got 3 squares a day and mid-rats.
So we actually, the cooks were feeding 4 times a day, 4 meals a day,
Really?
Yeah.
7 days a week, you know, till the whole patrol.
Well, I got to ask you something. You know, you were talking about how when you guys were drilling, he's trying to cook. Did the galley ever look like an I Love Lucy episode where the pots and pans are going everywhere?
Absolutely,
Did
it
you?
sure did, yes.
And were you cursing the guys that were
Actually,
driving the
I
boat,
was
so to
too
speak?
busy trying to hold on and avoid the things flying around than to curse anybody until cleanup time came. See, sometimes we'd have drills and they wouldn't tell us what they were going to do. They just did. And if I had something in the oven, too bad, so sad, Paul. You know? Too bad, so sad. And it has happened to me several times.
So you were feeding 4 times a day when you were in World War II on the diesels. Did you guys have a 4 meal a day schedule, or was you set up for a breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Or how did
Oh
y'all
yeah,
do that?
yeah, pretty much so.
Did you?
But there's many, many days that we'd have nothing but sandwiches. Of course, with the nukes, you're under, nice and smooth. But when you're on the surface, you know, and trying to make a rendezvous and running flank speed, man, the cooks didn't have a chance.
No.
So all we
No,
ate was,
because it's rocking and rolling. When you're on the
Yeah.
surface, it doesn't ride smooth.
so all we had for sandwich, we had sandwiches a lot,
Yeah.
quite a bit.
I'd appreciate a few of those days when we had them too. You know, didn't have to cook anything, just cut meat. If you could keep the slicer from sliding. Yes, sir.
I would imagine a certain amount of stuff was bolted down or something, or
Some of the equipment, yeah,
Some of
was,
it, yeah.
for safety reasons.
Mhm.
But you know, if you put a knife down here and then a drill goes off and you go up, the knife goes flying, and you know, just beware.
you lose more lives that way,
Yeah,
probably.
try to keep control and remember what you're doing at all times, where your equipment is around you and everything, just in case something like that happens.
And I guess that would be throughout the whole vessel too.
Oh,
You would have to be
absolutely.
aware of when you're drilling what's going on. You got to really be on your toes. You can't be just kind of acting
No
like it's a cruise
lollygagging
control
around.
thing. Yeah.
We, to give you an idea of the depth of procedure, we were very proceduralized on the nukes. On the diesel boats, not so much. When we rig for dive, we had an enlisted guy go through and turn all the valves, all check off the list, you know, and open these valves, close these valves, turn this on, turn this off, whatever. Then you had a chief come around, or a duty chief. He could be a first-class petty officer, but he'd be the duty chief. He would rig with a separate bill. And then an officer came behind him and rigged the compartment. You'd have 3 independent rigs of that compartment before you were ready to, you know, rig for dive or rig for surface.
Yep.
So, and you did it by the checklist. You didn't do it by memory. I could do it by memory if I wanted to. I mean, I knew where every valve was.
You better have that checklist with
But I
you.
had to have the checklist, and I had to, you know, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that probably goes a long way in explaining why you very seldom hear about mishaps on submarines as far as something going wrong. Is
Right.
because everything is checked 3 times, because it's something like an aircraft. It's not like you can pull over and change a flat tire from 10,000 feet if you have a problem. And by the same token, if you're well underneath the water and you have a sudden emergency, you may not be able to get to the surface.
No.
And that's got to be something that really weighs on your mind.
Now,
Well,
there was
that's-
this big difference between the nukes and the diesel boats, because we were up and down and everything, you know. Everybody knew exactly, no checklist or nothing,
Right.
all here.
It was all in the mind.
Well, the other thing too is that, you know, like I said, I was on the sailfish for a while. There wasn't as much to rig on a diesel boat to get to the surface or get to the, you know, everything had to be taken care. We had a reactor on that nuclear submarine
We had missile
and,
tubes.
and missiles and stuff. You had to make sure that you didn't make any kind of mistakes. You know,
Right.
and we, you know, when you think about it, we've been pretty good since nuclear power began in the Navy. We haven't lost a reactor yet,
No.
except for the the Scorpion went and the
Oh, yes.
Thresher.
and the Thresher, but that wasn't a reactor accident that
Well,
caused
you guys,
that.
No,
the
no,
Navy's
no.
got an outstanding record when it comes to the safety. We've gotten to the, like always, man, this hour just flew, but you guys have really filled me in on some stuff that I've heard you talk about before. I'm going to feel a little bit wiser now, but I do got to obviously thank you for your service to the country. But I also have to tell you, I've got the utmost respect for you guys, because I couldn't do it, and you guys act like it's nothing. So thank all 3 of you for coming on the program today. I want to thank the people out there for tuning in. We hope you found this interesting, and we'll see you next time on Veteran Voice.